everybody. Today I want to discuss with you a high-level Tesla 1Q 2025 deliveries estimate. Um, so this time around, this is kind of difficult to forecast because we are about to get a new Model Y, and based on some high-level assumptions, I thought it makes sense to make some impact assessment. So, so basically what I've done is I've broken down Tesla's deliveries into three buckets. One is the other models, so SX and Cybertruck, then the the Model 3, and then of course the Model Y. And in this sort of high level forecast, and as usual throughout the quarter, I refine these forecasts as we get data. But right now we don't have any data really. So what I've done is I've done a roll forward based on historical quarters, how sales have changed. Um, but we had to have to make some adjustments, and I will discuss them in a minute. And then I do kind of a bottom up analysis of the Model Y transition. There are a couple of big assumptions, but we'll go through them when we get there. So maybe let's start with sort of the more straightforward part first. So the other models line that Tesla discloses, so comprising S, X, and CT, I just for now assume a modest increase to 27,000 vehicles. This is driven by probably some continued weakness in S and X sales. So the increase is really incremental Cybertruck sales, plus the units Cybertruck has to replace from probably further decreasing S and X sales. The main reason is really that 1Q is globally simply seasonally a weaker automotive quarter. So there's some basically headwinds. So this is all reflected in this estimate. Um, so then when we look at the Model 3, here it becomes more complex because when we look at last year's first quarter and 2023's fourth quarter, and when we look at the change, so this was a massive quarter-on-quarter drop of 98,000 vehicles. And the reason, when I discussed this um, many times before, so there were various one-off effects why we had such a massive drop. So there was obviously seasonal weakness in 1Q. Winter is a big factor globally, but also the Lunar New Year, which has a very big impact on Asian markets, in particular Tesla's largest market, China. So all of this you see in this number, but there were also logistical problems. The Red Sea attack forced vehicle carriers around Africa instead of going through Suez Canal. There was arson attack on Berlin, led to shutdown in Berlin, messed up a European delivery schedule to some degree. There was new Model 3 ramp issues in Fremont, created people not getting their Model 3s in 1Q. There was a lack of vehicle carriers. There were some other things. There was just a lot of small stuff that added up that that led to this massive Q-on-Q drop. And I did some analysis, and I think all these one-off items created an excess drop of 53,000 vehicles. So in my adjusted 1Q 2024, which I want to use for my 1Q 2025 forecasting, I adjust for this. And so I'm using an adjusted 1Q 2024 number of 440,000. And I think this is pretty much in line with what the market expected at the time. I didn't use it as a basis. This number is derived by different means, but this is just a coincidence, which also kind of substantiates this number a bit. So long story short, I use this as my basis. And the reason why I use an adjusted 1Q 2024 number is because I want to look at the seasonal change from 4Q to 1Q, because I want proportionally apply that seasonal change to my 4Q 2024 number, which I know Tesla delivered 496,000 vehicles, to forecast my Model 3 number. I don't use it for my Model Y number because Model Y goes through a production transition, and we'll talk about this in great detail in a moment. So, but if you just stay with me for a moment on the Model 3. So when we then look at these reported numbers, this is the adjusted number, and we see how Model 3 changed from 4Q23 to 1Q24 adjusted. So the change was about 12,000 units. So I then use the proportional change. So I take the what this amount is in terms of that amount and apply it uh, to this amount, 160,000 reported Model 3s in 4Q. But I adjust this number up somewhat to account for the higher share of China sales, which are exposed to much more significant seasonality. So then I arrive at a Model 3 estimate of 144,000 vehicles, which is a lot higher than the uh, even the 1Q adjusted number. And the reason is 1Q 2024 was still going through the Model 3 ramp in the US. So there was very little Model 3 supply in the US, so you have to account for that. This is now a thing of the past, and so Model 3 is selling quite well, and there's no supply shortage. Hence, we should see actually better sales. So we basically we have then two parts of the three-part high-level forecast. So 27K units plus 145,000 Model 3s, and then we derive the Model Y number. So I expect 211,000 Model Ys can be delivered, and let's see how we get to this number. So in this number sits another, I estimate, just over 22,000 units sell down globally of basically the last few units of Model Ys that sit globally somewhere in showrooms, etc. that can be sold off as new. We know that Tesla has about 75,000 vehicles in global inventory. Um, Typically, the proportion of Model Y would be much higher than that, but I think most of the inventory drop came out of the Model Y inventory already. But I think that, and also when you do a bit of research, there's still some units left, and I think Tesla will sell them off almost entirely in the first quarter. And I actually apply a little haircut. I assume 90% of my remaining Model Y inventory they will be selling off globally. But really it should be 100%. So this number might be even a little higher. So anyways, this is the first input to the 211,000 Model Y units I forecast. Then, but the much more interesting component is this. This is 188,000 units. This is basically the 1Q 2025 new Model Y deliveries. And so how do we get to this number? So what I do is I assume, and this can be completely off, but we will find out very soon. I expected the first 2 weeks there's basically no meaningful production, no just trial production, and often some of these units you don't sell them. So I expect there's basically in the first 2 weeks of 1Q 2025 there's basically zero sellable production. Then I assume as a global average, Shanghai probably can ramp much faster because they've proven this with Model 3, was very quick turnaround. But Fremont probably will take a lot longer. Berlin, possibly somewhere in between, but also potentially quite quickly because it's also a purpose-built factory. And so on average, I assume a 3-week global ramp. So I assume an average production rate for these 21 days. And I talk about this production rate in a second. And this gives me during ramp about 38,000 units. And then for the rest of the quarter, these are 56 production days. We get to the peak production rate, and um, and this gives us another 201,000 units for a total production of 239,000 units. But we have to keep something in mind. This is the full 1Q production. This doesn't mean that we can deliver all of these vehicles because you have to, after they roll off the production lines, you have to put them out of the factory. You need a vehicle carrier, has to carry it, put often hundreds of miles away. The vehicle arrives, has to get inspected. The customer has to be notified. All the paperwork has to get in, has to be received. The customer has to provide evidence of payment, etc. So, long story short, there's roughly a 2-week period, minimum 2-week period, or let's call it average. Average is better. Average 2-week period before you can realistically assume you actually get the vehicle delivered and recognized in the same quarter. So long story short, what you should do prudently, to not overestimate, you should take off the last 2 weeks of production. This is at peak rates, so there would be around 50,000 units that you're going to make in 1Q, but you simply can't deliver, and hence you can't recognize them for your deliveries. So this is a deduction. So you have this number, 238,000, minus that unde undelivered number of units, gives you 188,000, plus the old Model Y inventory. These are all new cars, just to be clear, but it's just the outgoing model. And this gets us to the 211,000. So when we now talk about the production rate, so you can see here the daily production rate of Model Y, and you can see that um, the peak rate was in 4Q 2023, and then Tesla never really got back to that rate, and the reason was simply there wasn't enough demand, so they slowed production a bit, kept it lower, and so that's why I assume this peak rate then in 1Q, but keep in mind I assume no production, a ramp up phase, and then we get to this rate. Um, it's entirely conceivable that Tesla, if they really wanted to, they could actually make a lot more than 3.6K. Can they ramp fast enough in 1Q to get to a higher rate? I don't know. But overall, I think this makes it more realistic that they could actually, in the second half of the first quarter, they could actually hit the peak rate from the second half, I should say. So long story short, this is how I think high level about the 1Q deliveries numbers. Um, in terms of new Model Y, unless we see like very soon, in the next couple of days, um, significant numbers of Model Ys rolling out in Shanghai, Berlin, and in the US factories. Um, it's highly unlikely Tesla can make more new Model Ys in 1Q than what I forecast here. I also think the other models number is probably realistic, unless Tesla launches the lower cost Cybertruck with single motor for, I don't know, 15 or 20,000 below what the current entry level Cybertruck goes for. That could obviously blow this number completely out of the water. But right now, we have not seen that vehicle or any announcement on that. So I want to be conservative as of right now. We are right now in early January. And then in terms of Model 3, um, there seems to be no uh, sort of additional catalyst that should make us believe we can sell a lot more Model 3s in the seasonally week 1Q, except of course there would be a significant further acceleration in FSD progress. But based on sort of the vehicles trends we have seen in 4Q, where there was already sort of a significant improvement in FSD, I think we should not get too bullish right now on Model 3 sales. On top of that, people who buy Model 3 buy the least expensive Tesla, a smaller Tesla, and it's also conceivable that there's potentially some kind of Osborning in terms of people waiting for the new lower cost Tesla that is also probably launching after Model Y was ramped. That's my best guess. So with that, I hope my rationale makes sense to you, and see you in the next one. Bye.